let's talk about the man himself and the relationship between Saka and the Arsenal fans, and just how important that is between certain players and their fans, whatever club they're playing for. Ian Wright, in our intro, alluded to the similarities between Rocastle and Saka, and it doesn't get more emotional than that, actually, does it?
No,
Amy?
certainly not for Ian Wright.
Mm.
Just even thinking or mentioning the name of Dave Rocastle tends to bring Ian Wright to tears, and a lot of Arsenal fans are old enough to remember this greatness. I think when Wrighty talks about being burdened with glorious purpose, is that the correct phrase?
Yeah. Yes, I think so, yeah.
Which he's spoken about with Saka. You could say the same thing about Rocky. He had that in him as well. And the fact they played the same position, they had the same shirt number. They're both sort of young black guys from London who joined the club at a very young age and came through and became symbolic of their generation, and a kind of gifted bravery that they played with. They shared, and also both happened to be supremely lovely human beings, which helps.
Yeah.
I can see why that comparison springs to mind. And players do come and go through clubs, and this is why this signing, if he gets this new contract with his signature on it as quickly as possible, means so much, because he is, above all other players at the club, the one that is the biggest symbol of this regeneration at Arsenal.
Would he have been the one, Amy, out of all of them, every single player in that first team squad, that if he had left, the wailing would have been the loudest?
Yes, I think almost definitely. I think that fear of, as Adam was mentioning, a Man City just having too much money and too many promises of probably a more direct or guaranteed pathway to silverware. Arsenal are giving it their best shot, but they're obviously not at Manchester City's level of consistency for silverware and a Champions League appearances year on year, as Arsenal have been in the last 5-10 years. So a different kind of person could have been persuaded. I think that's
Adam?
the bottom line.
Yeah, Adam?
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I look at, he's also young enough that if he does have some dream within him to go and play, maybe not for a Man City, but for a Barcelona or a Real Madrid in years to come, then he's young enough to go and do that at the right time for him. It's a bit like, people were saying when Mbappe decided to stay another couple of years at PSG, it's for now, right? Yeah. It's in much the same way as Haaland signed for Man City. It's
yes.
I don't think any of these players will be one club players in the way that we maybe imagined 20, 25 years ago. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is what Bukayo Saka wants, but certainly he doesn't have to do it now when his team are top of the league. They're definitely going to be in the Champions League next season. I think this team will get better. I also don't think they'll probably have a better chance of winning the league than what they currently have this time around. I think it'll be really difficult next season, just because I think Man City are going to go out and spend a fortune this summer. And you've got kind of Man United coming, and you'd think Liverpool would be better. And I know Arsenal fans will be screaming here saying, we're getting better every year too. And that is true. But this year is an amazing opportunity. I think everyone recognises that. I think the other thing is,
Adam, that's why we don't want to talk about it.
That's why we can't talk about it. There is no title race. There is no title race. There's just football matches every 3 days, and that's all that's going on.
Thank you.
But when you think back to when he signed his last contract in, when was it, like summer 2020? I'm stealing from Amy's piece here, but he was wearing number 77 on the back of his shirt, and he was an unused substitute against Norwich that day. So if you think in the space of 2.5 years, the journey that he's been on as a player, you know, I think, yes, he's got a lot to give Arsenal, but I think Arsenal probably still have quite a lot to give him. And this coach clearly has a huge amount to give him. He's learning every day under Arteta and improving under him. And I always think back to that game where Arsenal beat Chelsea. Was it 3-1, where they had Saka and I think Smith Rowe and Martinelli all played. And I remember at the time, it was around Christmas, watching that thinking, is this a plan? Or is this almost like a last throw of the dice by Arteta in terms of, I've tried all these adults out, I'm now actually just going to chuck these kids in and see what they can do. With time, it looks like a genius kind of master plan. I think it was probably somewhere in the middle of both of those things. But I don't know what you think, Amy. Do you think the club always saw Saka as someone that was going to be in the first team, or is he someone that's surprised everyone a little bit?
No, I think when you speak to the coaches who had him further down when he was a kid, he stood out in every age group. But the question that they had about him was whether his speed and his physical prowess was what was giving him the advantage, because he just used to whiz past players in his own age groups as a kid with ease. And that was they had no questions that he was the star pupil. He was an immaculately behaved young man coming into the academy every day. His dad used to drive him from Ealing, which is, if you don't know your London geography, a bit of a schlep around to where Arsenal's academy is. And he was always on time. He was always polite. He used to sleep on the way home in the car, and he did brilliantly in all his subjects at school. He's almost one of those that you think, oh, it's just not fair to be this good at everything, and this nice. But he seemed to have it all. And I think there were, while you never can be guaranteed about a young player, he was certainly one of his generation that they felt had as good a chance as any, if not better. But of course, it's then about grabbing that chance when you get your opportunity. And that's what he's done so well. When you think of him coming through, there was a sort of big push from Hareland and obviously Smith Rowe being with him. And you're absolutely right about that game against Chelsea, Adam. That was a huge turning point. But in some ways, that was, at the time, the feeling was that was almost forced on Arteta, not necessarily premeditated. There were problems, there were injured players, there was all sorts going on. Form was out the window, and it was a bit like, we've got to throw them in. And it was particularly the combination of Smith Rowe coming in with Saka and obviously Martinelli as well, that suddenly there was this that fearlessness of youth. They just enjoyed themselves. They didn't carry any pressure and baggage into a situation when things weren't going well. They just loved it. And what's amazing is that, like you say, going back to your Adnan Januzaj comparison, is that when you have these sort of beautiful arrivals, coming out of the ball type of scenarios, is it just a temporary kind of flash of something that disappears as quickly as it arrives, or is it the real deal? And that level of improvement in Saka, just keeping on improving and thirsting for it still. If he meets legendary people in the game, he wants to ask them how he can improve.